And intro. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Maybe you're good-looking, so always looking for and finding the good. You found good in abundance because you have tuned in to the best podcast on the entire internet, the entire world, therefore, regarding one of the most important, beneficial, how should we say it, nurturing situations that exist in life. And it's called marriage. And this is, of course, called Marriage with Joy. Notice I didn't say marriage with joy, because that's not marriage with joy. It's marriage with joy. And we are privileged to have I hope our full team today. We have at least 2 out of the 4. And we have in the far southwest corner of the United States of America, our amazing, wonderful agent of happiness, the ambassador of happiness, wonderful Maura Sweeney. And over here in formerly Venice Beach, California, and now Henderson, Nevada, in the desert outside of Las Vegas, and it's Barry Shore. And we're here and we're holding the fort because we're expecting that wonderful Lori will be here and fabulous Diane. And so we'll see. Is it Zoom or StreamYard? Why did they ask that? I don't have
Barry,
the link.
that could be one of the issues because I had a little confusion before we got started. I had invitations for 3 different ways of coming in.
Oh,
that's probably it. So tell them, I think it's StreamYard is what we're on.
Yeah, yes. StreamYard. And she says she doesn't have a link. Okay, well, I love this. Don't have the link, won't open. So, tech is so wonderful when it works. Wait a minute, here's Diane. Wow. And I was just saying, tech is so wonderful when it works.
Yeah, right.
But you have the StreamYard link. So we are privileged. Now we have balance in the world. I was feeling really out of kilter. So now we have the Northwest, the Southwest. Woo, I can breathe again. Wonderful Dr. Diane Medved. And look at this. Look at the thing that people are streaming in. The full team. Yay, Lori. In the Southwest. No, sorry. Maura's the Southeast.
Right, but I'm Southwest Florida. That's it.
Dr. Diane is in Northwest, and Lori is in Southwest, and I am in the desert. Leading the Israelites through 40 years of wandering. Okay, so we have so much to discuss today because the world, let's be blunt, usually we do our show and it's upbeat, it's wonderful, and it's all full of positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant, which it will be today as well. I will interject in the beginning that we might speak about the V word. Now you're wanting the V word. Violence! Now, I don't mean violence between Israel and Hamas. That's a war. I mean violence that is roiling, I like that word, roiling the United States of America. And it relates, in my humble opinion, to our topic and who we are and what we do, which is discussing marriage. Because one of the great fundamentals, I believe, of marriage, and this goes, by the way, I have questions, because we get questions every week, no matter if we're doing a show or not. And we do it once a month. I get lots of questions. And the questions are from everywhere. I'm telling you right now. We've got questions that have nothing to do with anything we ever discuss. But people are writing into me because you people like to discuss stuff. You hear that? You people. I mean, you people like to discuss stuff. So they asked us to discuss. And people are concerned. The people are writing in. They're concerned about the violence from what we'll want of a better term, we'll call it young people. And I'll go a little bit long in the tooth just to set the stage on something. There were 3 little pieces that disturbed me tremendously. One is I read about a janitor. such a fine person. He's been working at Columbia for 11 years, takes care of his family, has, I think, 4 kids, and does everything he's supposed to do, works hard. And he was in the midst of the maelstrom that was happening when the not nice people took over Columbia's one of the halls. And they didn't just take over walking in the stairs and saying everybody were taking over. They smashed windows and they barricaded. They did unpleasant things in a very terrible way. And the janitor got caught up because he was being assaulted. He managed to wrestle one of the people, I don't know if he wrestled him down, but pulled off the mask of one of the people that was leading the group. Now, this person was not 22 years old. He was 25 years old. He was not 29 years old. He was not 33 years old. He's 40 plus. He is, for want of a better term, a professional activist. Here's the amazing thing, though. Well, actually, maybe it's not so amazing. They did a bio on him because the janitor identified him and people found out. He lives in a $4+ million mansion in Brooklyn. He has another home someplace else, a $2 million home. His parents are very wealthy. His stepmother, or the divorced, is going out with this one. He's but they think the beautiful people is disturbing. That's one anecdote. Another anecdote is, and I think it's obvious to anybody who wants to see, that a number of the people that are involved in the protest were not people who just instantaneously said, we want to protest this. These were organized. These were delegated. They had manuals, and it was done not 2 days before or 5 days before, but weeks prior. So there's again, I like to say, malign influence that's happening. And the third thing is that, again, fully disturbing, and I heard this from somebody in my family, so I can't mention the name, of course, and I can't get it out of my head, so I'm just going to say it. It's a person my age. He was talking to his son, who's one of my relatives, and when his son, one of my relatives, he and I get along very closely. He's decades my junior, but he loves talking to Uncle Barry and discussing and things. So my dad said, hey, when he was a kid, he was marching and things also. So it's like, oh, that's what happens. And I realized, unless I am totally naive, which may be, this to me is very different than the anti-war movement of the 60s. This is a movement that is predicated on harm, intimidation, pain, violence. The anti-war movement was, okay, we, the people, the students of America, we don't like this war, and you're killing people. Two sides, you can hear it, they discuss. This is different. This is designed to intimidate, especially Jewish students, by an influence that comes from outside our country. So it's radical Muslims, by definition, not all Muslims, not even, it's a minority. However, radicalized kids who have been raised with a hatred, I mean, they're raised with it. That's all. No, nobody disavows that. This is very fascinating. Nobody said, well, no, we weren't, and it just happened. So how do I bring back this? And we don't want to dwell on the violence aspect. I want to bring it back to us because we're talking about marriage with joy. Part of the fundamental, I believe, of what we do in our podcast and project here to share with the world and be a beacon of light is that a marriage creates an atmosphere that lends itself to people respecting one another, attempting to live in harmony, recognizing service as a fundamental of living well, and God willing, if you're blessed with children, that the children you raise have those values. And that is what helps create joy. So again, I got dozens of questions. I don't even know how to formulate them. I was trying to. One of the things I'd like to begin with, though, of course, we'll lead off with our leadoff batter, that home run hitter, Dr. Diane Medved, who, by the way, if you'd be kind enough, Dr. Di, to speak a few minutes about your trip to Israel, because it's quite meaningful, especially right now.
I didn't go to Israel.
And I want to discuss, to begin with, about this, what I call the R word. And I sent everybody a couple of videos and I've had a chance to look at them at all. The R word about respect. Respect one another, parents to children, children to parents, et cetera, et cetera. So Dr. Diane, if you'd be kind enough to begin, and please tell us about your journey to Israel at this very time.
It was my brother-in-law Harry and his family went to
Israel. Oh, Harry went to Israel. Well,
his daughter is doing her gap year there this year, and so he went there to be with her and also my other brother-in-law Jonathan and his family who live.
Jonathan lives there, right? But
right, they've been living there for 40 years. Right. So we were not privileged to go there. We were scholars. My husband and I were scholars in residence at a program in Scottsdale, Arizona. Worldwide Kosher. So that was wonderful and pleasant, but we did not have the experience of actually going to Israel. So have to disappoint you on that.
Okay.
Although we did go to Warren Buffett's shareholders meeting, which was very encouraging because it reminds me that there are people who believe that with their own hard work, they can get ahead. And that they believe that if we respect those who are wise and have done what we want to do, that we can learn from them and we can succeed ourselves that way. And I found that inspiring. So there was that.
Well, let me unpack something. So first of all, our podcast goes worldwide. We will presume for the moment that most people have heard of the name Warren Buffett. And if you haven't, look it up, because there are lots of people under the age of 30 who they may not know. Look up Warren Buffett, the most successful investor in the history of capitalism. Mm-hmm. So you went to Omaha. I was in Omaha this year.
I was in Omaha, yes.
You went to Omaha because you wanted to experience it. You have Berkshire shares, or just because?
Yes, we are shareholders. We got to be there in the stadium. It was a football stadium. It was filled with chairs. There was between 70 and 80,000 people from all over the world. People came from Europe to attend it. People came from China. People came from Mexico and Venezuela to attend this meeting because they admire the idea, the capitalist idea, that if you work hard and you have a goal and you pursue it and you do so in an ethical way, that you can succeed and you can not only improve your own life, but thereby improve the lives of all those who are around you and benefit from anything in your sphere. So that was very encouraging to know that there are so many people around the world who share those fundamental values, which are the values on which our country was founded.
And will be maintained if we're able to make it through trying times, because we are in trying times.
Okay, getting back to the trying times. You talked about 3 anecdotes, and I believe that the kind of people that you were describing were from different groups that are coming together in a malign way, as you put it. The guy who lives in the wealthy big mansion and got money from his parents is a very different guy than the Muslim activist who wants his religion to be enforced on everyone in the world, believing that that's what God wants for people. He's willing to die because he thinks it's godly in a perverse way. However, the guy from the mansion, he's an anarchist. He doesn't want any rules on him. He doesn't want people telling him what to do. He doesn't want anyone else to have any more freedoms than him because he thinks he's the source of values and the source of freedom. So those are conflicting goals which happen to coincide in what they're doing to disrupt our country. And I find the disruption shocking because what I hear is anti-Semitism. And we're told in the Haggadah, which is the book that we read on Passover in our Seders, that in every generation, they're going to be coming after us. And we didn't believe it for the longest time because we have been fortunate that for a couple of generations, at least since the Holocaust, we thought that it was a never again situation, that we could then avoid that because everyone was aware of the danger of anti-Semitism and people had gotten reparations and everyone was so sorry about it. Well, we're finding that's not the case. And we have to be vigilant, and we have to be God-fearing, and we have to realize that the source is not necessarily us for everything that happens in the world. And so I think we've got a combination of things happening, and that anti-Semitism has to be called out. It has to be voiced. And as far as what Israel's doing in the war, I think that there are many very, very smart people who see that if that had happened, that incursion on October 7th had happened in the United States, we would have been even more active in our retaliation and trying to get those who would then have continued to hurt us and harm us. So I think our country's confused. First of all, I have to say in the 60s, I remember those protests well.
Wait, you weren't even born until 1990.
Yeah. Well, okay. I actually was going to UCLA at the time, and I remember that the school was shut down. I was at the time taking a class taught by Angela Davis, who was a self-proclaimed communist. And I remember the riots at the campus. I remember going into the sociology building. I was a soc major, and police coming up in full riot gear up the stairs that I was walking down. And I was shocked. It is an image that I will never forget, to see these very determined police, just squadron of them in riot gear with clubs in their hands and helmets on their heads and covered up. It's extremely disturbing. And to see that kind of thing being repeated, the big difference is the kids in 1960 didn't want to go to war themselves. They were being drafted and they didn't want to go to war. It was self-preservation. Now it's for something that's happening in another country. And they decide to take the underdog. Now, Jews have always been the underdog, but it's flipped. And now the Palestinians, who have never before been a people, are now the underdog. Even though we know all the facts, we know that they had Gaza to themselves since 2005, and then they started building when Hamas came into power in 2007, all those tunnels, all this money that was coming to them from UNRWA, which was the charity branch of the UN, went to making tunnels so that they could destroy Israel, and did not get to the people. They did not make an infrastructure that would allow the people to progress and to use the natural resources that were there, a beautiful coastline on the Mediterranean. No, they took that money, they enriched themselves, and who are the kids that are at the schools that are joining in many of these Palestinian rallies are ignorant. They're ignorant. They don't know all the facts. They just think the underdog is being killed in numbers too high to tolerate. Of course, those numbers come from Hamas itself, and they include combatants. And Hamas admits that it gets some of its numbers from news media. It doesn't actually collect figures of people who have been hurt. So all that is not in the minds of these kids who just want to fight authority, want to assert their own power, want to grow up and feel like they're powerful. There's a whole bunch of personal and interpersonal things that are going into this disruption. And I think it all comes back to marriage and the family, whereby kids need to be taught respect. They need to be taught to respect authority and respect the values that they have been inculcated with, and only behave in harmony with those values. Those values don't include fighting police. They don't include disrupting classes. They certainly don't include anti-Semitism. And I think parents have been derelict in their duty to teach children this, and number one, to model it. A lot of the hippies from the 60s are the parents and grandparents of these kids who are now disrupting classes. And it's really their duty to say, these are not our values. This is not what we want. There's two sides to this, and many of these kids just want to get out of class. So I think it goes back to the marriages that these kids came from, and the modeling that came from the parents, and the lack of teaching those values to the children so that they would then realize that we are so privileged to live in this country. We are they're protesting something in another country. They should be grateful for where they are, and they should stand back and let that country solve its problems.
So there's a lot to discuss here. Thank you for going on the soapbox. You can get down now. So everybody knows about AI in today's world. So my definition of AI is arrogant ignorance. See, it's one thing if people are ignorant. When people usually become really ignorant, they become arrogant also. So that's the AI that we're suffering on. And if you recall, well, I told you're too young, but I recall there was a great bumper sticker for many years that read "Question Authority." Remember that? So
Yeah.
I was able to interpret it two ways. One is the way that the people who didn't like it say, "Question authority. You don't listen to anybody," and the other one is, if you're coming from a religious background, is question authority. In other words, go to an authority, ask questions, and then you'll learn. That's how you question authority. The issue at hand, however, is the G word, and I think you hit it perfectly. It is the inability to express gratitude for what we have here. So a lot of the agitators, whether they be the wealthy ones who are eager to disrupt just because, anarchists. And anarchists have been around since the beginning of time and will always be here. They usually get marginalized. However, there is a very heady brew these days of anarchy mixed in with natural angst of kids who, by the way, at the end of school year, and this happened at Columbia, and again, it's being repeated at a number of other of the elite institutions who are less than elite. Columbia Law School has said nobody has to take the finals, law school finals, and gets a passing grade. Yeah. Because the students wrote that they just did too traumatized. They can't concentrate. I mean, how do you expect us to do this? So it's a very wonderful. If you're a kid at college, let's be blunt. Why not get a passing grade in order to do anything, right? Especially if you were marginalized. And thank God, out of the thousands and thousands of people at these schools, it's a smaller group. However, we always know that small vocal groups make a lot of noise. And if you don't just make noise, but you intimidate, you harass, you burn flags, and here's the craziest one of all: you're masked. You're masked. It used to be a given. What do bad people do? They mask themselves, bank robbers and gangs and such like that. Well, now it's a sign of freedom fighter. So the upside down aspect of this is directly what you're saying. The people who come from homes where values that we cherish, the Warren Buffetts, the Donna Reeves, the father knows best, et cetera, hard work, diligence, ethical behavior will always succeed. One of the great lines that Warren Buffett has said recently is that they don't, in his investment advice, they don't go for huge returns. He likes slow, steady profits and growth over decades. He owns Coca-Cola for decades. He didn't buy iPhone until 6 years ago. He wanted to make sure they could perform, and it's the ability to understand that incremental progress and respect are the bedrocks of success in life, in earning, and being happier, healthier, and wealthier. So thank you for those insights. And you're right. Anti-Semitism obviously hits home to Diane and myself specifically because it's visceral. It really touches. And we're not talking about just, gee, I hate Jews. I don't mind. You can hate us all you want. Just don't go around with a 2x4 hitting people or with a knife or a gun, which is what was happening. Okay, on that high note, wonderful Maura, sipping a cup of tea in your living room in Florida. Let's talk about again the values and the begin with the respect, because if there's respect in the home for the values of building and growth and consideration, I'd be willing to wager that more often than not, that a child or children from that environment would choose not to participate in the events that are going on at these particular schools? I don't know. I'm just asking. I'm placing it on you.
Well, I'm thinking about our own family, Barry, and I'm still lost in all the conversation that came previously. There was so much to it. I have so many things I can give my agreement to and my assent. One of the things that you introduced this segment with is the fact that this was not accidental. This was premeditated. And I'm glad you opened up with AI and how, ignorance. I will tell you there are certain things I do know, other things I surmise, and many things I remain ignorant about. But I do know for some or maybe several nefarious reasons what we're experiencing here, especially in America. I know that's been going on in other college campuses elsewhere around the world, but it was premeditated and it was planned and it was staged. In fact, 2 days ago, my husband and I were doing some work for the local elections office, and we happened to be at a state college. And they were going through exams. My husband said to me, "So, Maura, you think there'll be any people protesting here?" And I said, "No." You know why? It's not an A-list university. Do you know they actually published in advance, and someone has released the list of all the college campuses that were chosen? They would be the campuses whose names people would readily identify with. And then you add an additional lens of a media that wants to give it attention. And now you've taken someone's malevolent exercise or plan and you have broadcasted to the world. And then you have further fueled the hate. And I want to add to what you're saying too, confusion. I'm repeatedly amazed. I know I've traveled to so many countries, so many places I haven't been. Everywhere I go, I'm always looking to learn the history, the culture, the religious background, the governmental structure, what it is that makes families work and people continue on. What are some of the good things that are worth sharing? And what I'm seeing here in America are things that I saw in the Balkans. And we were not in America. We were never a vigilant people because we never had a war or a civil war here in our nation. There were always things going on elsewhere. And I used to notice that people were very vigilant, having had problems in their own nations. We are learning what that's doing to our country. And it really is looking to break apart the fabric. You're right when you say there are staged people, they're professionals. They go from place to place. Some of them are crisis actors. I noticed that when some of the masks were being taken off, a lot of young people and others felt very exposed because they were hypocritical. They were there for reasons that maybe they shouldn't have been. Many of them have been involved in these activities just because they have too much time on their hands and they could very easily get motivated. So what does that tell you? It says, I know nothing, but I will say this. In the places I have gone, and I'm even referencing back to many of the countries I've spent a lot of time in, which were the former Balkans, where people of so many different backgrounds for several generations got along very well until the leader passed away and new entities came in and got each ethnic group, each religious group kind of riled up against the others. And people who used to respect and honor others who were their neighbors, their friends, different cultural backgrounds. These are people from very ancient roots and different religious backgrounds. They were taught to hate one another. And it broke up families, it broke up friendships. And at the end, you know who suffered? The people. People at the top gained at some level. There was a certain amount of corruption. There were new leaders that came in. So what does that mean for us? And I grapple with these issues. I don't know whoever assigned me to be in charge of world peace, but I think about these things every day. And one of the things I came to a conclusion in many, many years ago is that there may be so much hatred in this world, so much arrogance, so much resentment, so much of a sense of superiority and judgment of others many of whom we don't know or have never met. But I would always like to be an example, a living example of someone who gives others the benefit of the doubt, someone who's interested in others, someone who wants to learn about others and give myself an opportunity to learn what it's like to live life in their shoes, and also to be the mom, the wife, the neighbor, the community person that has a heart of open doors. Now, that doesn't mean I'm stupid. I'm not going to say to everybody, come on in my house and bring, your trouble with you. But I will say personally, and this goes back to the marriage thing, we, as you know, only had one child, even though we thought we'd adopt a few from overseas and have several of our own. But we always had an open house. And not only did we travel a lot to other lands, but we had exchange students come in. We had missionaries coming in. We had families and friends and others coming. And so we became living examples, let's say models of what is life like when we can look to one another. And here's the word you introduced to us earlier, Barry: respect. When you respect other people, you respect yourself, you respect your home and your family. And then rather than saying, oh my gosh, this world situation is so bad, to almost reverse the paradigm a little bit and say, what can I do in my own life? And wherever my space is and wherever my arena is of influence, and we all have a place of influence, and how can I be a light in the world? Remember, we talked about lighthouses several programs ago, and a stabilizing factor in a world that is so easily moved, and moved not always in good ways, by emotionally charged elements. The other one thing I want to say, and for whatever it's worth tonight, we're now talking obviously about what's going on in Israel, but I think we saw the same thing take place prior to this with Ukraine. How many young people, how many people went crazy about what was going on in Ukraine? And we had people in this country fighting, arguing, and dividing over things going on in Ukraine, where most people in America could not find Ukraine on a map. I've been there, I've spent several weeks there, but it goes back to ignorance. So what can we be? We can be individuals. We can be partners in a marriage. We could be parents, grandparents. We could be in the community, and we could be people that carry ourselves in such a way that literally embody the very values that we wish to see emulated and replicated by others. Because otherwise we become, I would say, the effects of society rather than the better cause of a society that we all aspire to.
Thank you. Wonderful, Maura. I want to pick up on a couple of things that you mentioned because they touch deeply. Interesting enough, we're using the R word again, in respect, as a foundation of marriage, because it's so wonderful. I don't just love my wife, I respect her tremendously. And sometimes I'm sure she even thinks the same of me. And it's dynamic, it's beautiful. And we live and teach love as a foundation of life. I think what we're seeing at the moment is an outbreak of people who were raised with hatred. And what the hatred means, almost by definition, not respect for others. So if you respect others, it's very hard to hate them. If you have respect for others as a foundation of your life, okay, you may not like people, but hate is very strong. That's gut, that's visceral. That is, I believe, a very deep-rooted, deep-seated process that is encouraged, unfortunately, by other elements. A lot of elements that say no respect for the other. And an essential element of living in joy in marriage is to be able to understand, as an individual, I can only grow so much. As with a partner, it's about we talked about many times. It's about growth. That's one of the only reasons they get married, is not because I want my wants fulfilled and things like that. I'm the man, so I want to have my wife serve dinner, or I'm a good cook, so I'll make her that. It's not. We're not a business relationship. It's a different situation, and respect. So therefore, if you respect, you have an opportunity to be a light, as you said. And a light is a very different aspect than being consumed by hatred. Hatred, almost by definition, is darkness. I can't understand. Maybe I'm wrong. No, I'm not wrong. I'd like to hear from somebody who hates, how they can understand that to be light in the world. The only way you can do that is say, well, don't you understand that person, those people, that group, those people, well, they need to be eliminated because they are so da-da-da-da-da. That's hatred. We don't live that way. To wax a little biblical just for the moment. So in the Bible, in the Old Testament, as it's called, we call it the Torah. Every week we have a portion that we read. So in the course of 52 weeks or so, we read through it every year and such like that. That's what, by the way, October 7th last year was a day called Simchat Torah, the joy of the Torah. And it's a celebration. We had completed the cycle and we were about to start a new one. That's when we were attacked on that very special holy day. And by the way, it was chosen. To go to your point, it was chosen. It wasn't just, well, let's get up this morning and go attack Israel. You don't do that with thousands of people. It was chosen. Okay, because of the Torah. So this week's portion is called, I'll say it in Hebrew, then I'll tell you in English, Kedoshim. Kedoshim means holy or special or set aside. And I'll tell you three of the ideas in the section. It goes on for 62 sentences, 64 actually. One of them is one of the most famous in the entire world. I'll say it in Hebrew and say it in English. V'yahavta l'reyecha kamocha. You ready for this, kids? Love your neighbor as yourself. Ever heard that one? Does that resonate? Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, that sounds very biblical. That sounds very loving. That sounds like light. Doesn't sound like a lot of hate, does it? It says, love your neighbor as yourself. That's the Bible. Jews brought Bible to the world. One of the reasons that we're so loved. Okay, that's one of them. Another one is, it reads the following. I'll say it just in English. Don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. You'll say, well, that's kind of odd. Who goes around putting stumbling blocks in front of blind people? That's just too bizarre. That's like pulling on a cat's tail and throwing it around your head and such. Well, obviously, it's not what it means. It means, yes, of course, you're not going to put a stumbling block in front of a blind, but it also means don't cause someone who is unaware, ignorant, blind about a particular situation, whether it's an investment, it's a marriage potential, or relationship with somebody. Don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind person, somebody who needs help. Find a way to be of a light, to be of help. The third one is, mipnei seva takum, before an elderly person rise up. Well, that's nice. Okay, that's respect. That's the R word, right? But that's the literal translation. It also means that, as we said, question authority. Respect and understand that there are people come before you. People will come after you. You're a link in a chain. And what you really want to do is be part of the chain of goodness, of light, of joy, of peace. And anything that doesn't contribute to that is, almost by definition, wrong, evil, hatred, death, mutilation of stuff, hurting. Those are three main points that are the essence of the biblical outlook on the world, what we call the Judeo-Christian continuum. And unfortunately, in the radical Muslim world, Those are looked upon as weaknesses. That's what people don't understand. You hear that? And so we have an element in our country today that has been fueled, fostered, paid for by, again, malign influences around the world, radicalized, to go and bring forth their banner of hatred, death, putting stumbling blocks in front of the blind, hurting people. So on that happy note, wonderful Lori, let's start with the idea of, because actually I want to pick on you because you bring something that neither the other three of us have at the moment. And that is 3 young children. Now, they're not, when I say young children, somebody might think they're 5, 6, and 7. They're not. They're ranging in age from what, 11 to 19?
Well, they're older now. My youngest is 17.
Youngest is 17. Well, that went by fast because we've talked to each other for years. All right. Youngest is 17. The oldest is
24. I know,
That's
Barry. Let's
yeah.
talk through. I'm old now.
Okay, yes. Well, that's good. So 17, 24. They are the perfect age for us to ask you, what is going on? I mean, what do they say? What do they speak about at home?
Oh, such a loaded question. I have so many things to comment on everyone, and then I have so much to say. So if you're right now in this little pocket, if you're asking about what my kids say, they go, "Why is that happening? I don't understand." Anyway, can you tell me what's for dinner tonight? Like they just don't care, and in some ways, I'm kind of glad because they don't see it. My daughter goes to Penn State. Nothing happened there. And I know why nothing happened there because the school doesn't allow bullshit. And when something weird's going on, they go, knock it off, crush it, stop it. If people started putting up tents on the field, the minute that happened, the police would be out, they would just take care of it. There's no shenanigans. And I think, here, I watched the whole Columbia thing, the whatever school come out, and I'm like going, when at first I'm like, well, who's in charge? Get out there and clean that up. Oh, but they it's like almost like people are it's like they don't want to, they're afraid they're going to upset people. So they do nothing. And then in the end, it becomes so big that it's too late to even talk to people. Because in the beginning, if they had just nipped it in the bud, it would have been over. But I'm going to segue into something that happened to me a couple weeks ago. There's this bug flying around here. Sorry. In 2013, I had lunch with a woman who told me, Lori, your husband's having an affair. Leave him. Family's the most important thing. Family, family, family. My husband loves and adores me. I have 3 small children. You're making a huge mistake. You're wise. Your husband's an idiot. Leave him because things will never change. And I kept thinking, no, I don't believe that. I think my husband's just something's wrong. He's going to get through this. So take it to a couple weeks ago. So I decided I did not like this woman. I never talked to her again. I mean, I didn't not talk to her. She was in my community. I never crossed paths with her again. So I'm walking out of this thing last Wednesday and I see a friend of mine going into church and I'm like, what's going on? I know all these people going to church. And she goes, oh, this girl died. And I go, who? And she told me it was the woman I had lunch with in 2013. She died? Yes. What happened? Well, what does that mean? We think she committed suicide. Oh, okay. Why? Her husband left her. Wait, what? And so then what happened? I'm texting all these people who I know her. And I said, what happened? And the response I got back from most of them was, you never liked her. Why do you care?
Oh.
And I said, because she's a woman in the community whose husband left her, and that's what I do. Why didn't any of you tell her to call me? And she kills herself? Like, where are we as a community? We failed. We failed as a community. This mom, her kids are 14 to 7. And she's gone, right? So we failed her. And to me, we're failing everywhere. We're failing at our schools. Like if I was a parent of the teacher at the Columbia thing, I would have gotten my ass down there the first day it happened. And I would have been like, what's happening? Where are the police? Get this crap out of here. And there's not enough people that stand up and go, no, this is wrong. People probably saw this woman falling into depression. They said she was depressed. And I said, what did you do about it? Well, that's the problem in America today. People don't feel they have power to stand up and say something and do something. And all of that stuff that happened, all this stuff, like the politicians that are getting up there. Well, I'm really happy that people are standing up for democracy. That's not democracy. Where's the families? Where are all the moms and dads of these kids who go to school there? UCLA kids standing there in front of people with masks on saying he's Jewish. I can't get in. These people won't let me. I'm not Jewish. And I'm like, what the hell? That kid pays to go there. I hope every student of all these colleges that screwed these kids over demands for their money back for this year. All of it. I'm sure there will be lawsuits. And if there's not, there should be. This is wrong. And we have to teach people, kids, how to stand up and take ownership for what is right and what is wrong. And that's what I teach my kids. When they come home with a problem, I'm like, what are you going to do about it? Well, how are we going to make this better? Your teacher's not understanding you because you got a crappy grade. March in there tomorrow and tell her how you feel and see what you can do. Well, I can't do that. Well, then I'm going to go with you so we learn how to do this together. Well, you can't go. Well, then I guess you're going to take care of it. Right?
Right.
We can't screw around. We're leaving soon. I was at the football game. My son's tournament for lacrosse he's winning everything. The team.
Oh, wait a minute. Bravo.
I know, right? But so now all these people are coming with babies and things, which is weird at a lacrosse game. But, I love generations. So there's a baby there, and I haven't held a baby in a while. And I held this baby, and I looked at this baby, and beyond the baby was an older man who was like in his 80s. And I looked at the mom, and I said, do you realize this baby is going to be 80 in 2100? We're not going to be here anymore. Your baby is going to look like that guy in less than like in a blink of an eye. And she looked at me as if I just told her something horrific. And I'm like, that's life. This is life. How are we going to live it right now? What are we waiting for? Stand up. Sorry. I went in many
Stand up. Okay, so this is wonderful. Let's show you that this is your daughter at Penn. So Penn got nipped in the bud.
There's Penn and there's Penn State. There's Penn and there's Penn State, two different places.
Okay, so this is Penn State.
The crappier school. Penn is really good.
No. I'm glad to hear that because Penn was the problem. Penn is where a lot of this difficulty originated. Why? When Penn allowed a man to swim on a women's team, in my humble opinion, which is not that humble anymore, that shook the very foundations of our culture. And I'm going to say something that I will be accused of in just a few moments. It was the white liberal, oftentimes Jews, who did not speak out, Lori, and say, we're not giving money to this crap, this nonsense. It's a guy. We're not funding that. They didn't do anything. They kept giving them money. Now, they stopped giving money because, now it's against the Jews. And, we're not giving money. Excuse me. You were the one who undermined what I call, you became anti-Christian, anti-white, anti-woman. And I'm glad she goes to this crappier school. Thank you. Because she would have been corrupted, the other one. Because they corrupted the values of America. They corrupted Warren Buffett's world. Warren Buffett lives in Omaha, Nebraska. I mean, let's speak it out. Omaha, Nebraska, Diane, if I'm not mistaken, I was there once, is, it's not Mayberry RFD anymore, but it's still a somewhat quiet place compared to other situations around. And Warren Buffett is one of the wealthiest human beings on the planet and lives a modest life, not because he wants to show off that he's modest, but he's saying, that's not what I do. What I do is I love helping others. See, I think the American way is the Judeo-Christian way, which is we love helping others, right? HOPE, as you know, my acronyms stands for helping others progress every day. That's what HOPE is about. And by the way, I'd like to end on this high note of hope, because this is America. It's a war. We will always win our wars if we're diligent. Like you said, Lori, time to stand up. Somebody has to say it's right and wrong. One of the things that disturbed me a bit, and I found it fascinating, is what at UCLA, Diane, when the crazies left, and they left rubbish everywhere, garbage. So it was Jews who organized themselves on the west side of Los Angeles to go and pick up the rubbish and clean up. Okay, nice gesture. And then, okay, smart, not smart, I don't know. But what is it doing? We need to be the people who clean up, so that, Lori, you don't have to go to church and say, what happened? And we failed as a community because we don't teach our kids to clean up after themselves. We don't teach our kids to speak out and say, well, man, this is not right. Mom, Dad, what do you think of that? That's not right. We'll go on there. Well, wait a minute, but they're scary looking. They have masks and they shout nasty things. They've been making me feel bad. Well, you do that and we don't have a country. And without America, I'm going to do a Michael Medved for the moment. Without America, there is no Western civilization. Abraham Lincoln said, we're the last best hope on earth. Because if you look at what's happening in England, and especially London, I have dear family. My brother-in-law and his kids live there. And I just spoke to them the other day. And I asked them, don't you feel nervous and scared? Here's what they answered. Yes. What are you doing about it? What can we do? Okay. And at this point, not much. Because even the authorities have lost authority. And in Paris, it's not Paris anymore. So there's until the war of Israel and the radical Muslims is finished and the radical Muslims lose, so that at least the world can say, you, Israel, you're not nice. You look at all that stuff you did, but whew, thank you. Okay, now we can go forward. We need to get to a point where we can use these ideas we talked about. Love your neighbors yourself. Don't put a stumbling block in front of blind people. Get up and give honor to older people. I like that, Lori. Look at the babies. In the year 2100, that's going to be that guy over there, because it does go by so fast. Just like our hour, by the way, goes by so fast. And I got to tell you, kids, you hear it every week, but I'm telling you again, you have no idea how much benefit you're bringing to the world. We got dozens, if not hundreds of people who write in. And that means there are thousands and thousands who don't, but are just out there saying, gee, this stuff is interesting. Because we're talking about the most important process that exists in the human condition, called marriage. And when you make it marriage with joy, and it's oriented towards growing and getting better and showing respect one for another, that ripple effect can create a tsunami. That tsunami of goodness goes all around the world. And every time that somebody sees Maura and Jimmy and Diane and Michael and Lori and what's your husband's name again? Yeah, that guy.
Brad,
right. It makes a difference. It makes a difference because we're all mad people, right? MAD stands to make a difference. So this has been quite the interesting show, more so than a number of others. And we're blessed that this month, we're in the month of May 8th right now. Wonderful, Diane. Do you have April showers bringing May flowers, or do you still have May showers?
Yeah, no. We have intermittent showers, but it's supposed to be beautiful the next few days.
Beautiful means no rain.
Means no rain, blue sky, green, everything bursting out, lovely flowers. The rhododendrons are everywhere.
Well, that sounds like Southern California and Southern Florida and Henderson. I got to tell you, it's wonderful here. So I want to say again a huge thank you to each one of you for making the time and the effort to contribute and doing what we're doing. We're going to do another one before the end of this month. And I hope we don't speak again about violence, and we're going to have more and better news, because this show is the lighthouse. We did it together, kids. So look at that beautiful, look at these faces. I mean, if you're only listening, I'm telling you, it's great. You're missing something if you don't see the beauty that's emanating from these wonderful ladies and my smiling face as well. Okay. So as we do, we like to do two things. We give a hug and a blessing. So we'll do the blessing first, which is to everybody, go forth, live exuberantly, spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. And to everybody, a huge hug, which stands for heartfelt, unlimited gratitude. How you like that? Heartfelt, unlimited gratitude. 1, 2, 3. Make it a great one. Bye, everybody. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running.